Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of Ceraulo Sports Talk with me, Joe Ceraulo. Joining me today, it's NFL Network reporter and senior writer, Steve Wyche. Steve, thanks so much for joining the show.
Joe, good seeing you again. Thanks for having me on. And congratulations on your graduation.
Thank you. Thank you. That's much appreciated. Now, when I first reached out to your terrific PR team at NFL Network, I wanted to have you on the show to talk about football. But given what's transpired this past week, I think it'd be pretty tone deaf to sit here and ask you how competitive the NFC South is going to look or
Right.
how important Baker Mayfield's third year is going to be. So, Steve, if it's okay with you, I want to talk a little football, but I think there's some bigger picture stuff that we can use this platform to discuss as well today.
That absolutely. It would be, like you said, it would be absolutely tone deaf to really think that football is at the forefront of people's attention right now.
Perfect. So thank you so much. And, speaking of football, though, I did see a great interview with you on NBC Sports Washington not so long ago, where you talked about two quarterbacks atop the game right now, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, very different quarterbacks. But what, in your eyes, do they share that makes them both elite?
Well, I mean, they're young, they're incredibly talented, and they have upside. That's the thing. Pat Mahomes has been in the league for 3 years, and Lamar Jackson's played for 2. I mean, if any of us thinks that they're at their best right now, we're sadly mistaken. It takes years to learn opposing defensive coordinators and their tendencies, or opposing personnel and their tendencies, and to really feel comfortable of what you're doing going from stadium to stadium and whatnot. So the upside of these two talented players, yes, their styles are different, but people forget Lamar Jackson threw a boatload of touchdown passes last year, as well as running. He's someone, in my opinion, who can adapt. He's not just, hey, a run-first guy or a joystick-type quarterback. He's going to continue to grow, much like Russell Wilson did, much like Steve Young back in the day did. And then Patrick Mahomes is just – he's an uncapped talent. I mean, we've seen very few players with his ability to throw and to run and to improvise and to shed tackles, and being under a teacher like Andy Reid, who teaches you much more about the game than just playing quarterback. Again, their ceilings are limitless, and I think that's why we're going to continue to be talking about these two quarterbacks among a handful of others for the next decade or so.
And there's been a lot of talk lately about a proposed, instead of an onside kick, proposed 4th and 15 situation to get the ball back. When you look at guys like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, is there an unfair advantage associated with this rule change?
Yeah, look, that got tabled at the owners' meeting last week. That's not going to go into play, but think about it. I mean, if you've got those quarterbacks, or you've got, an Aaron Rodgers or whomever, we'll see Joe Burrow or some of these guys, Tua Tagovailoa, and you decide to do this 4th and 15 for some of these guys is nothing. I've seen Jimmy G and Jared Goff rip off these types of things. And I think one of the unforeseen circumstances, one of the reasons why it was tabled, is let's say the offense just drives 75 yards and the defense suffers an injury or two. That's going to open up, vulnerability for someone like a Patrick Mahomes to take over and say, oh, they've got their backup cornerback in there. Let's work that side of the field. So, and overall, the main reason why they're going to take more time for what I think is a very creative idea is basically saying, as Rich McKay of the competition committee said, we don't want to make the comeback so easy. So I think that's part of the reason why they're going to think this thing through a little bit more. But it's a good idea. I like it.
It would definitely spice things up. Might make things too easy, though, for teams like the Chiefs and Ravens. Now,
Right.
The quarterbacks we've mentioned, Mahomes, Jackson, Russ Wilson. You mentioned Aaron Rodgers. He's the one exception. I'll even throw in Deshaun Watson here. Some of the elite quarterbacks in today's game are all black quarterbacks, and it's a position that less than 40 years ago with Warren Moon, a guy who became a Hall of Famer, he couldn't even get a shot to play in the NFL at that position. Given what's going on right now, it's been going on for decades and centuries, what does it mean to America's black youth to look at the quarterback position and see 4 of the top 5, 4 of the top 6 black quarterbacks in the NFL?
Well, I think it means a lot to black kids saying I can play that position. But at the same time, I think it means a lot to white kids saying, okay, this can be our leader. I mean, that was kind of always the big issue. I played quarterback in high school. I was the first black quarterback in my high school outside of St. Louis, Missouri, and it was an issue. It was a conversation piece, and this was in 1983 like, wow, they changed their system for this guy because I was a thrower. I could run it, but I was a deep thrower. We were an option offense, but I was one of these guys who could put it all over the – it was a conversation. We would lose a game, and it would be, well, you got to get that white quarterback in there who won us all those games last year. And so the fact that we can see this now – and it's crazy. You know, you brought it up, but for the most part, people don't talk about it. People don't talk about the fact that, you know, we've got the Russell Wilsons of the world, and we've got Kyler Murray, you know, the first overall draft pick. You know, things like this. It's really smart coaches now in college and the high school level are putting the player who they think can lead the most, whether regardless of skin color, at that position, and it's worked its way up. So yes, we can talk about some of the best quarterbacks being black quarterbacks and what they can do and how they've changed the game in terms of playing in space, or someone like Lamar Jackson, who's such a dual threat, or Deshaun Watson, if he can extend a play, the magic he makes and how he can carry a team like the Texans. But again, it's something 15 years ago that sounded odd when you said, yeah, hopefully we get to the day we're not talking about the quarterback skin color, but it's just not often you hear someone say like, yeah, you know, Russell Wilson, the Seahawks black quarterback, or Kyler Murray, the Arizona Cardinals black quarterback. You know, and look, Tua Tagovailoa, you know, he's going to be the second or third, you know, Samoan. No one's going to be talking about that, really. I mean, there are going to be some articles and some stories about what, you know, how he really supports his culture and whatnot. But it's just I think an evolution, because the game is where it is, and maybe the mindset a little bit has changed among coaches and players in the NFL. That I think it's just fantastic that we can talk about how great these players are and not always have to bring up the fact that, hey, this is a black quarterback, and it wasn't, you know, it was just less than 20 years ago, whatever, 30 years ago, we had our first black quarterback starting in the Super Bowl in Doug Williams.
Yeah, no, those are all positives, right? Having, like I said, 4 out of the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the league being black. How much bias still exists in the league against black quarterbacks? You look at Cam Newton, an MVP not too long ago, can't get a job. Jameis Winston just threw for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, signs to be a backup. I mean, I can't help but think that if, you know, you put those labels with white quarterbacks, that they'd be signed to be starters in an instant. Is the bias still real?
I honestly can't go there just because I'm so close to this. I mean, I talk to general managers, I talk to teams. Mm-hmm. Jameis Winston's back up because he threw 30 interceptions on top of those 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. I mean, when you have a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, that's not good for any quarterback. Okay, if Aaron Rodgers had that, people are going to be like, this is not the guy we can go forward with because it's been a consistent trait since his college days at Florida State, you know, with Jameis Winston. So, and look, he played for Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians loves Jameis Winston. So I like the fact that Jameis went to New Orleans. He had opportunities to go elsewhere, but he went to New Orleans so he can learn under a great developer, a great play caller, and then Drew Brees, who people will tell you if you're in a quarterback room with him, it is like no other training and studying that you can, you know, you can get anyplace else in the NFL. As for Cam Newton, I mean, look, Cam's been a starter. No one's, I don't think anyone's holding that against him. He's been a starter. He's been an MVP. He started a Super Bowl. Right now, Cam is coming off of 2 major surgeries. Now, we've seen video of him looking nimble, throwing the ball well. Looks like the foot is getting better. But teams are slow playing this because there just aren't that many starting jobs open right now. And then Cam can also say, I'm not just going to sign with the first team that offers me a backup position. So, look, the Patriots are still out there. There's still going to be some options. At some point, Cam will be on a team. It's just going to be a dynamic. And this is where we get into this, you know, real under-the-hood football stuff, is if he's not going to be your starter, this is a guy with a massive presence. Okay, Cam's not a big talker, so to speak. He doesn't walk into a room and blah, 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 but he's got this huge presence. He's Cam Newton. And if it's a bigger presence than your starting quarterback, what does that do to your locker room? Well, some teams, some coaches are too fragile in their confidence to have that dynamic, even if you've got a strong starting quarterback and a strong locker room. So it really depends on how these coaches have built their locker room and how they built their culture. But Cam will be with the team. He'll end up getting a shot. I don't think this has anything to do with him being a black quarterback because, you know, he's shown what he can do and he's had opportunities for a while.
Now, If you're just joining us, NFL Network reporter, senior writer Steve Wyche here on Ceraulo Sports Talk. Go give him a follow on Twitter at Wyche89. Steve, back in 2011, you started covering Colin Kaepernick at his Senior Bowl. You also were the first reporter to speak to Cap about his national anthem protests, of course, when he was protesting police brutality by sitting and then kneeling during the national anthem. How much of what's going on today do you believe could have been prevented if more of America had embraced Kaepernick and actually took the time to understand he was protesting police brutality, not our servicemen and women, instead of blacklisting him?
Oh, well, I mean, look, to say that this would have prevented another, unlawful police officer murdering an unarmed black man is a reach, because it's happened whether Colin Kaepernick peacefully protested, whether it was in the NFL. This is nothing new in America. It's just being recorded. It's just being videotaped. This has been happening forever. I think in terms of Colin's message is, I am bringing attention to the police brutality that led to the deaths of Freddie Gray and Tamir Rice. And it was ignored. People saw him trampling on the national anthem and on the flag and disrespecting the military. Very few people, by and large, there are a lot of people by the numbers, but very few people by and large fully understood that he was doing this to say, yes, there are bad police officers. They need to be punished. They need to be disciplined. Nobody wanted to hear that. Even in my original story that I wrote about him sitting during the national anthem in a preseason game against the Packers, where he said that you have black men being murdered by police officers and they are getting paid administrative leave. This is what's going on. It hasn't stopped. There are still 3 police officers right now up in Minnesota who are walking the streets watching that city burn. Why haven't they been arrested? We'll see. It took months down in Brunswick, Georgia, for the murderers of Ahmaud Arbery to be apprehended because of a leaked video that one of them leaked. Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. There is still no arrest for the police who barged into her apartment wrongfully and murdered her. Okay? These are the things that Colin Kaepernick was trying to convey by taking a peaceful protest. And now that people are seeing these agitators and provocateurs damage buildings, and these wrongful people damaging the name of protesters, looting stores, saying, why can't we have peaceful protest? We had peaceful protest. We had peaceful protest with Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed and so many other people trying to lead the way, and people crapped all over them. This isn't the way to go about it. You can use another forum to do this. So what do you think now? What do you think taking a knee before the start of a football game, how do you think that would be taken now? It's a story that black people and minorities, Native Americans, Latinos have heard forever. You protest by taking a knee, it's wrong. You protest by breaking windows, it's wrong. What's the proper way to protest? Going up to a government capitol with AR-15 strapped across your chest and getting in the faces of police officers? Maybe folks of color, if they tried that, we know what would happen. So it's a constant contradiction of values depending on which world you grew up in this country. And I think that's what Colin Kaepernick has, the point he continues to try to make and the point he tried to make with his original protest.
Yeah, it's amazing in this country when it comes to the White House, how some people are viewed as thugs and which people are viewed as very fine people as they're outside the Capitol building with AR-15s. Steve, a lot of people out there may think that as a reporter or a TV personality that you're safe from what the bulk of the black community experiences. What went through your head when you watched a fellow reporter, Omar Jimenez of CNN, get arrested on live television Friday morning?
That if he wasn't black, he wouldn't have been arrested. Plain and simple. I mean, it's we saw it. we saw it. He identified himself, this and that. But also went through my head is, why are you getting rid of a journalist? We've seen this in other places. Why are you moving a journalist from an area if you're doing the right thing? It's the people who are like, why are there surveillance cameras, on my street corner? Well, if it's all good, why are you worried about it? So, but no, my first thing is like, yeah, they arrest the black guy. And, it is what it is, man. I've got sons who are 22, 25, or 23, 20, about to be 24, I should say, 24, 20, 26, and 7. They've all been hemmed up. They've all been hemmed up by police. My son twice for walking down the street because he supposedly fit the profile. Hey, man, it's nothing new. And as a parent, when you've got to deal with an agitated son who has just been hemmed up for walking down the street, it is one of the most gut-wrenching things you ever have to deal with, but it is an everyday existence, and you have to deal with it. And you have to play mind games, Jedi mind tricks with your kids to keep them confident and to make them believe in themselves. And it's, I know some people are like, oh my God, it is what it is. I mean, it's what has to be done. My mother had to do that with me. Growing up in a suburban town outside of St. Louis, where I was one of the few black kids, all the time, you're always aware of your blackness. You're always aware of what could happen. And there's a lot of people in this world who don't have to walk around with that awareness. And it is just what it is. And so, look, when I saw that reporter get arrested, I was like, oh, got the black one. And that's just, I'm just keeping it real.
Of course, and I really appreciate the honesty, Steve. Look, I know we're on a bit of a time crunch here, so before I let you go, there's just one more thing. I don't want to discount what a lot of white athletes, celebrities, colleagues of yours, and others, including myself, have posted on social media about standing in solidarity, what they've said about it. What can we actually do? What can people who truly stand with the black community do in terms of real action, not just posting or saying a few words on Twitter, to show that we do stand together at this time and at all times, even when this may seem to boil over?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I had a lengthy conversation with my colleague and Hall of Famer Kurt Warner the other day about this. And look, there's no real answer about to this. I think it's what you're comfortable in doing. If you want to go work with people to change legislation, to hold cops accountable, or if you want to do something for oversight committees to really push district attorneys to press charges. But I think initially, it's if you're sitting around with two of your buddies, or if you're sitting in a workplace or whatever, and you hear people say, look at these ends breaking windows, or somebody speaking which you perceive as wrong or missing the point, call them out. Yeah, the reason why they're breaking windows is because they've had enough, right? They saw a man die with a police officer's knee on his neck. He didn't move for 3 minutes, and the cop, with a smug look on his face, his hand in his pocket, seemed cool with that. Tell your friends in the smallest of settings or the largest of settings, hey, that's not cool. And if people are afraid to talk about race, talk about right and wrong. If we can change just a little bit of thinking and let that snowball steadily roll downhill, just to give people a conscience, just give them conscience and make them think, damn, I can't walk in that person's shoes, literally, but wow, what if this happened to me? How would I respond? Then that maybe can get some thoughts going and change some of the attitudes.
Steve, like I just said, I appreciate you keeping it real. I appreciate the honesty. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully, in the near future, I can have you back on to actually talk about football. But right now, this is what needed to be discussed, and I really appreciate you joining me on the show.
Hey, man, fantastic job, and I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Me too. Steve Wyche, NFL Network reporter, senior writer. Follow him on Twitter @Wyche89. This has been Ceraulo Sports Talk with me, Joe Ceraulo.